Clear for takeoff.
Well, good morning all to the Kings of the Heart podcast. My name is Tariiq Walton. I am a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist, and I am not by myself because this is Kings of the Heart. That's plural, which means there's more than one king. And the other king is the one, the only, my man, my macaroni, Dr. John Hart. Dr. Hart, what's happening, brother?
Hey, man. Happy Friday, brother. I'm
Happy Friday to
excited.
you.
It's a great topic. Here again with the people. It's going to be a fun time, bro. Always good to see you, homie. How you been?
I've been good, man. I've been good. Just keeping busy, trying to make sure that we're pumping up Kings of the Heart, man. We got clips all over YouTube, Facebook, IG, TikTok, Twitter. We are making sure that everyone is aware of what's going on, man. After 5 seasons, we figured, why not, right?
Why not, man? We got to expand the reach, brother. We got to expand the reach.
And we're doing it, man. A lot more people are viewing us and checking out what we're doing. We get a lot more listeners. And this is what we want. You know, we're just trying to be here for the people, making sure that they're getting good information, good, solid information, research information, not just people talking about relationships, but who are actually out here working with people on relationships.
True facts. True facts,
what I'm saying?
Bro.
So, and in the spirit of that, we're going to keep things going. This time, we want to break down. This is something that we see in session a lot. I know I do. The whole concept around transactional relationships. Transactional relationships. Now, a lot of people may not be quite aware of what that means, but we're going to get into it because we want people to understand if they are in a transactional relationship, and if they are, how do you find your way out of it? Because it's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all, right? So let's get into this conversation. Dr. John, let's just start off simply with a definition, a working definition of what it means to be in a transactional relationship. When it comes to romantic relationships, you know, because we can talk about that from friendships and work and family, but particularly with romantic relationships. What does it mean to be in a transactional relationship?
You know, it's you know, whenever I hear transactional relationships, you know, I think about those setups and structures between two people in which, you know, they say to themselves, okay, here's what I have, here's what I'll bring. And the other person's like, here's what I have, here's what I bring. And we're going to try to make this work. So it's not fully predicated on love, nor is it predicated fully on love. I mean, there could be some connection there, but it's transactional. When we say transactional, it means that there is a coming and going of time, resources, money, energy, effort that have to flow. It has to flow. There's an intention. I'm going to use that word. There's an intention between both parties that there's going to be a back and forth flow, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later. But you know, there are some form of boundaries and parameters that's much different than a non-transactional romantic relationship. All relationships are transactional, like Brother Rick was saying, but this one that we're talking about, the intent is that both parties are going in knowing that there's about to be some level of exchange. Now, the equity piece, that's for probably part 2, because you know, or something, because that's a key to why sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. There's that equity piece that usually holds. And also in the transactional relationships, there has to be, and I'd love to hear what you think, bro, but there's usually some tangible indicators and some tangible aspects to it, right? I give you money, you give me, you know, sex, or we make sure we set this up that we do A, B, C, and D. But the distinct thing about transactional relationship, there's usually tangible items going back and forth. These aren't abstract ideals or like lifestyles that we're talking about. So that's what comes to my mind when I think of transactional relationships. But I'd love to hear what you think, though.
The first thing that pops into my mind when I think about transactional relationships is the idea that we're not just doing this because we love each other. And not saying that love isn't involved.
Exactly.
But it's the idea, the expectation that I have to get something out of this.
Yep.
And you have to get something out of this.
Yep.
That, again, this is an exchange of time, of effort, of intention. And of course, with all relationships, particularly with your romantic relationship, you want to be able to put in effort. But the difference between a regular relationship and a transactional relationship is the level of expectations that
Yeah.
I'm not going to do unless you do. That I'm not going to be motivated to do anything unless I know that you're doing something. So I'm expecting
Yep.
for whatever I'm doing, I'm expecting something in exchange. Like you said, I don't mind taking you out for dinner if you're going to provide sex for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mind picking you up from work if that means I can drive your car.
Right.
you know,
No,
it
no,
is.
but do you see those good examples that you gave? That's what I meant by tangible. You see how
Yeah.
tangible and concrete those are? It's a
Yep.
little bit different, right? And I think you would agree, it's a little bit different than like the non-transactional. Like transactions exist in non-transactional relationships.
Right.
It's just it doesn't it's but to your point, there's
It's the
not this.
degree.
Thank you. Now, go
Mhm.
ahead, brother. I just
Yeah.
wanted to like underscore what you were saying, but you're spot on, bro.
Yeah. It's the degree of it. We all
Yeah.
have expectations. You're not going to be in a relationship without some reasonable expectations,
Right.
right? These are more unreasonable. Let me not even say that. That sounds very judgmental, right? It's
Yeah.
not so much about being unreasonable. It's just the level of the number of and the depth of the
Good.
expectations that you have,
That's it. That's it.
right?
Well said. Yep. Yeah.
And then what happens on the back end of it.
Yeah.
If you are in a transitional relationship, and we'll get into this deeper later on, but I just
Yeah.
want this to be understood while we're making this point. On the other end of a transactional relationship is if you're not fulfilling those expectations, there's punishment involved in that, right? In a regular romantic relationship, you may not fulfill all the expectations of your mate, so you'll talk about it. You'll readjust what you're expecting. You'll figure out whether or not they're reasonable expectations. But in a transactional relationship, there are going to be punishments. There's going to be distance. There's going to be cutoffs. There's going to be me just being resentful and quiet and not listening to you or not doing what you want me to do because I didn't get what I wanted. So that's the key to the transitional expectations. I mean, transitional relationships.
Transactional. You said
Transactional.
transitional.
Man,
Yeah,
I'm
you
all
said
over it, man.
transitional. It's all right,
I'm so
brother.
excited about it. That's what it is. There's so much in my head about this. But when it comes to transactional relationships, that's the main thing. If I don't get, you don't get,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And also the tone and ethos of this kind of relationship is very different. That's
How
why,
so?
like, okay, well, no, I was gonna ask you. You said how so? So you you in non-transactional relationships, you don't hear the word, nor do you is it the ethos of those kinds of relationships where you hear the word punishment. So why did you
Mhm.
use that word? That's where I'm getting at. Why did you use that word? Because you don't hear that in non-transactional romantic relationships.
Right, right.
But when we're talking about transactional relationships. So my question is actually back to you. Why did you use the word punishment? That's me getting at the sense that there's a different ethos in this kind of relationship. Why punishment would be used when we don't use that in traditional romantic relationships. So talk
So,
to us, brother.
so I need to get back into the judgmental side of this, right? So I will use the term unreasonable expectations. When you have unreasonable expectations that aren't being met, then you're going to meet those unreasonable expectations with an unreasonable response. So
Yeah.
when I say punishment, okay, when I say punishment, what I mean is your response to not getting what you want
Come on now.
is in excess
Uh,
of what it should be. All right. It's almost like throwing a temper tantrum.
yep.
So you're not giving me what I want. I have these expectations that I set for us. I may have been very clear about it and told you this is exactly what I want and this is what I expect from you and from us. You not providing that for me means I'm not going to give you anything. So I'm going to sit over here pouting and not talking to you and avoiding you as much as possible. Extreme behaviors, extreme reactions to not getting what you want.
Yeah.
So when I say punishment, that's what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Your extreme reaction to not receiving what you expected, what you wanted, not taking into consideration why it might not have happened. That doesn't matter to you.
Yeah.
What matters the most to you is the fact that you did not get what you wanted. I'm going to let you know that you disappointed me, not through words, but more so through my own behavior and my own reactions.
Right.
You're going to be punished. Me not talking to you for a few days because of something that you did that bothered me, or you didn't provide me with what I wanted, that's punishment.
Mm, mm,
That's punishment. That's why I use that term.
yeah, yeah.
Punishment is very clear in the behavior that follows someone who is being disappointed within a transactional relationship.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Does that make
think
sense?
no, I think it makes sense. I think my follow up question to you, brother. So it makes sense to me. So I'm putting myself in the shoes of our audience, right? And
Mhm,
what about the few audience members who are saying to themselves, I'm hearing how Brother Reek is describing this. How is that any different than how, let's say, a high conflictual couple would show up? You know, in terms of
mhm,
punishments and the extreme response to unmet expectations, right? So
mhm.
what's the difference? You know what I
I
mean?
mean, what is the conflict rooted in? Is the conflict itself, when you have high conflict couples, is the conflict itself rooted in those disappointments of your unreasonable expectations?
Mm,
So, I mean, think about when you're in session with a lot of the couples that you meet. I'm telling you, that's the thing that I realized when I was thinking about this topic, that a lot of the relationships that come across our offices and our practices are transactional. And it may not have started out that way. The relationship may not have started out that way. But because of the intensity of the conflicts and the years of disappointment, of being unfulfilled, of not getting what you want in your relationship, by the time you reach us, you are probably more than likely in a very transactional relationship. I'm not getting what I want, so there's a problem. And so those conflicts are often rooted in the lack of fulfillment, of not getting what you want. A lot of those conflicts are transactionally based, right? Doesn't
mhm.
that, I mean, isn't that, when you think about that, isn't that pretty much what you're seeing too?
Yeah, no, it's true. And the reason why I specify that kind of couple is that this is where I'm going to your point about, in transactional relationships, that extreme response to unmet expectations is a very distinct aspect of high conflict couples as well, right? But this one's different, and I just wanted you to underscore, because
Okay.
you was hitting the mark. But I didn't want some of our listeners to say, well, what if the brothers today are talking about transactional relationship and the way Brother
Mhm.
Reek is breaking it down? How is that different than some of the high conflict couples that folks may be in right now, those
Mhm.
relationships, or they may know folks, because when you hear high conflict couples go back and forth, it really sounds transactional.
Yeah, very much so.
It's
Yeah.
very transactional,
Yeah.
actually, right? You and I have always talked over the years about that tit for tat, right? But what you and I are talking about today with the transactional relationship is that I don't want to say this word, but
Say it.
I'll say it.
Say it. Say it anyway.
But yeah, but the fact that we're talking about transactional relationships, it's almost like you're providing a service, an agreed upon service.
Mhm.
And when you don't meet that
It's
service,
business-like. It's a business-like relationship. Yes.
right?
Yes.
I didn't want to use the word service, but
Ah, why not? It's true.
it's a
I mean,
service.
yeah.
It's a service. Like you're providing money or housing or something, or
It's an
sex, or it's
exchange.
an
It's an
exchange of
exchange.
goods. It's an
Yes.
exchange of goods and
Yes.
services,
Yes.
right?
Otherwise, you don't serve a purpose in my life. If
Right.
I'm not getting that out of you, all right, this is an exchange.
Yeah.
This is a very business-like
Correct.
relationship. If
Right.
I'm not getting what I expect out of you,
Come on now.
then you serve no purpose in my life. Why are you here then?
Right. Right. Because
That's
remember,
the attitude of somebody who's in a transactional
correct.
relationship,
Correct.
right?
Because it's not predicated on love in the beginning
Or emotion.
or emotions. Yeah,
Or
absolutely right.
emotion. I mean, we
Absolutely
think about, let's talk about what's often missing when we're trying to get to a more romantic relationship, which again is probably the opposite of a transactional relationship. Although there are transactional aspects of being
correct.
in a romantic
Correct.
relationship, right?
Correct. Right.
When you think about what's absent from a transactional relationship, which is usually much more present in a romantic relationship, what are some of those aspects that are missing? What are the things that transactional relationships are missing that romantic relationships are full of?
One of the things that comes to mind when you ask that is, and I'm just speaking general. I know like not every couple does this, but I would hope they would. For transactional relationships, those they're not predicated on connection and getting to know the person.
Right.
It's almost like I see you, you have something that I want and need. You see me, I have something that you want and need. and so now we will draw up papers like that. That's how it sounds. Whereas
It's a
for
contract.
yeah, I know, right? But for traditional, romantic relationships, it's really predicated ideally on let's get to know each other, let's date. I want to learn about you. You want to learn about me, inside,
Right.
outside. We're
Right.
talking, bro. I'll even take it a step further. Ideally, you're talking about values. You're talking
Yeah.
about serious things like, do you want kids? Transactional relationships aren't really talking about that. It's very like me focused and
Hmm.
presently driven.
Hmm.
Whereas like couples are coming together ideally to really say, is this a good fit when thinking about who I want to spend the rest of my life with? And that's the other thing that's missing. Transactional relationships are not predicated on the future. To me,
Right.
it's not. It's
Oh
not.
yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing about that.
It's
Yeah,
very
it's
present
very,
focus.
very
What
present
am I getting
focus.
right now?
Right.
Right.
What am I getting right now? Which is to your
Mm-hmm.
point. If I'm not getting what I want right now, that's how I can get rid of you, or I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
end the contract. Ideally, traditional couples aren't acting like that. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the two things that come to my mind. There's time being built way in the beginning of getting to know each other, but then there is an implicit and explicit uh, intentionality
Mm-hmm.
around figuring out, can we live together? Are we a good fit for the future? Having families, exploring value. You don't hear that stuff in transactional
Well,
relationships.
I would say that to a degree you do, particularly around having kids, because that may be part of the transaction. The
Sure.
reason why the reason
Sure.
why I'm here is because I want to have children, and that's what you're supposed to provide for me.
Yeah.
So if we're not talking about having kids, and that's the expectation I want for my relationship, for my marriage, then again, why are you here?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're not gonna provide me with a child, whether you're the one creating, whatever side you're on of that,
Yeah.
then this is not what I want. This isn't what I signed up for. I signed up for a full family, and all you're providing me is yourself, and that may
Yeah.
not be enough for me, right?
Yeah.
So that's a transactional relationship,
I agree. I agree.
right?
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. I mean, like, are there what other indicators come up for you when you think about what's missing from transactional relationships compared to those traditional romantic couples?
I would say the main thing that to me is a emotional investment. When you think about a transactional relationship, again, it's very surface. It's based off of what I can get right now. There isn't a lot of emotional depth and emotional investment in the actual relationship. It's okay, if I can't get what I want, then I'm out. Or if I can't get what I want, I'm going to punish and hurt you. When you are emotionally invested in a relationship, you don't want to punish you don't want to punish your mate. You don't want to hurt your mate. You don't
Right.
want to leave.
Right.
You're gonna want to talk about what's not happening, and let's try and figure this out. My punishing of you for you not giving me what I want is not what you do when you're heavily emotionally involved with somebody, because you know it's hurting them. Your emotional involvement with somebody is predicated on wanting the best for them. So why would you ever do anything that's going to hurt them? And you're doing that intentionally in a transitional relationship because you're not getting what you want. So you don't care how the other person feels. But when you're emotionally invested in somebody, when you really want the best for somebody, that's not going to happen. It's that emotional investment that's often the key indicator that's missing from a transactional relationship. And so
Yeah.
even when clients come in and we start talking about, all right, what are the healthier components? What are the elements of a healthy relationship? Oftentimes they don't even start thinking about the emotional side because they're
Yeah.
so caught up in what they're missing and what they're not getting, that the idea of, oh, I need to be emotionally invested in this. I need to be more emotionally involved in this, and open and transparent and vulnerable. No, that's not in their head. They're not thinking about that. They're like, no, I'm not getting this. These are my expectations. I'm not getting this. If this doesn't happen, then I gotta wash my hands of this thing.
Sure. Do you think this is a question? I'm not saying it is, but do you think, especially in the beginning, the boundaries are far clearer in transactional relationships than they are in the traditional romantic ones?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things I would say is probably a benefit, if we can say it's a
Yeah.
benefit
Yeah.
of being in a transaction relationship.
Mm.
You know why you're there.
I know.
It's a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
honest and very
Yeah.
direct understanding of why you're there. So
Yeah.
even if you think about people who are just out, say if they're not in
Sure.
a serious
Sure.
one-on-one relationship, and they're dating
Yeah.
and they're playing the field.
Right.
Well, that's a transactional relationship too. You know why you're here. And when you're no longer providing this, whether it's us going out, whether it's us having sex or whatever, when you're no longer willing to provide that, there's no reason for me to be here. Right. And so that's what you started seeing about transaction relationships. Again, there has to be an exchange of something here for me to stick around. Right. So why we even bother doing this?
Yeah, it's not. I'm with you. It's that's why I'm glad we're talking about this because folks need to, yeah, folks need to be able to understand that there is some distinct differences, right, with
Mhm.
what we're bringing up around transactional relationships, and then the aspects of transactional, um, back and forth and the
Mhm.
traditional romantic couples as well. I think this is a really good conversation because
Yeah.
again, we don't want listeners to get confused, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I brought up the boundaries. Oh, let me share this. The reason why I brought up the boundaries when I asked you is because I think for traditional romantic couples, there's the evolution of the boundaries, right? As we get to know each other, um, we're sharing experiences and ideally we're talking about what works, what doesn't work for us and stuff like that. And
Right.
you don't, let's be honest, bro. Like especially as marriage and family therapists, most couples aren't doing they're not providing very clear boundaries way in the beginning. They're not.
No.
You're
No, they're not.
so you're so
Mm.
much you're so much excited about being in love. I wonder if this is the person. You're not really doing that, which is why sometimes things get out of control and they come and see us down the line like, oh yeah, I wish I would have like been more upfront about A, B, C, and D. But the
Yeah.
transactional relationships, you're right, bro. It's like your butt knows why you're here.
Mhm.
Don't play games. Don't act cute. I know what I'm providing. No, no, no. That's why I asked about the boundary because it's so clear and distinct
Mhm.
in the beginning.
Right.
Versus, I think it evolves,
But
one way or another.
let me talking about the evolution. Is it possible that a relationship may start off very romantic, like kind of like you're putting it? It may start off as a very romantic relationship and then evolve into a transactional relationship. And if so, what is the cause of that? What makes a relationship move from more romantic into a transactional one?
I think, yes, yes, and I also want to flag that it can go in the opposite direction as well. Like you can also
Well,
go
that's
from,
hope.
yeah, yeah, it can
That's what we're
go.
here talking about. We want to move you from transaction to more romantic.
Yeah, two more romantic one. And I'm not gonna lie, like I just want to flag, like since we've been talking about this, for some reason I've been thinking about the Spike Lee joint, "She Hate Me,"
Yeah.
and yeah, right. It's
Oh,
like
that's
that
very
was
transactional.
very transactional, very very
Yeah.
transactional.
That's
Uh,
100%
yeah,
transactional.
but I just for some reason I just been thinking about that Spike Lee joint while you've been
Uh-huh.
talking about it. Good movie, interesting movie, by the way. You
Yeah.
haven't seen it, but no, like to your point, when you asked that question, I thought about those couples, bro, where they got kids and got a really great life and but they're not in love and so they're just like nah, like let's revisit how we're about to move because I don't want to get a divorce. You don't want to get a divorce.
Right.
But I got needs you're not really interested in providing or attending to it, and I'm cool with that. The other person probably feels the same way. And so like there is a shift for some couples, and I think it's to maintain the stability, to not rock any kind of financial
Mm.
parts to what they've developed. I mean, some of us as couples are like putting in mad work
Yeah.
and you don't want to rock that. And then also, I keep bringing up the kids because a lot, people do stay for the kids, even if the kids are
Yeah.
freaking grown, bro.
Yeah.
So
True.
that to me was like one subset of the of our conversation that I'm saying to myself, well, that technically starts to become very transactional, where it's
Mhm.
like I'll sleep over here, you'll sleep over there. I'll attend your family's things, you attend mine. We keep this, whatever we want to call it up. But I get to go play over here. If you want, you play over here. Um, it's yeah, I don't know why I'm thinking about so many different, like this is a great time. I'm thinking about, so I don't know if everyone has seen it, but if you were to ask me interesting, if you're looking for an interesting couple to study in terms of balancing love and transaction, this is just me. If you don't follow politics, cool. And I know this controversy regarding like Kevin Spacey, but it's House of Cards is a really great example of this. Like really
You
great
ain't
example.
lying.
I
Oh,
mean, when you talk
yeah.
about how to,
Yeah.
I mean, a very fine line between like
Yeah.
love and transactional. Frank and Claire Underwood. If you haven't seen it, guys, I don't care much for the last season. I saw it, not really good, but watch the first, I think, 5 seasons.
Right.
If you and seriously, if you have time and you listen to this podcast, go check them out because that is what me and Brother Rick are really talking about. Like
Yeah.
that is a really interesting couple in which they love each other. Like
Mhm.
I've seen House of Cards probably like 5 times, and it's a
Okay.
long series, but they do love each other. You walk away knowing they love each other, but it's very transactional. They
Mhm.
openly talk about these transactions, bro. You got Frank saying like,
Yeah.
"Hey," you hear Frank saying like, "Yo, I'm gonna be president. I need you to put me on. I need you to, you know what I mean? And you
Yep.
play your role because when your time comes, then we're gonna." I mean, but they love each other. So I don't mean to digress, but when you asked me that question, and I was talking about the couples who stay for whatever, like for some reason, like Claire and Frank Underwood, I think is a premier example of what it potentially looks like to balance love and that transactional relationship, meaning you have both identities. Here's a couple that has both, but you see the problems and also the successes that come from it. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to flag that, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even to that point, I think sometimes transactional relationships can be masked in the way that I support you,
Right,
right?
right,
I'm supporting you. So I'm going to show up for all your events. And the expectation is when it comes my turn, you're going to do the same thing for me.
correct,
But when
correct,
you don't,
correct.
that's the point.
And
When
you
you
see,
don't,
and you
there are
see that in
consequences for you not doing it.
and you see that in House of Cards. You
Yeah.
literally hear
Yeah.
both of them saying,
Exactly.
you literally hear that one of the most famous scenes, the most famous scenes is when Frank Claire did something, and it's one of the most critical scenes in the whole series where he's in his kitchen and he's talking about what you said. He's pretty much like she will pay for what she's not following what she agreed upon, and she will pay. And that's his wife, B. No, 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 seriously, that's his wife. And he talking like that?
relationship start off when you come into it. Say you are in a situation, in a transitional phase in your life where a relationship really isn't the best thing for you, but you still want to be able to connect with somebody, and you may have someone there who also says, "Okay, you know what? They may settle. They may say, "Okay, well, if that's all I can have, then I'm willing to be that connection for you, even if we can't have something deeper." This is the thing that just popped in my mind.
Mm.
So oftentimes you may start off the relationship or start off your dating or whatever, your situationship, whatever it is,
Mm.
you may start off in that place where it's just very transactional. Look at, we just hook up, friends with benefits. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah.
We start off, but eventually somebody may catch feelings. They become more
Absolutely.
emotionally involved, more emotionally invested in this transaction, and they end up wanting more. And so you sit back and you're like, how are you going to change up on me? That's the thing about transitional relationships too, transactional relationships as well, that you may start off in one place, or at least both of you may start off in one place, but the more time you spend with somebody, you may become more emotionally involved and emotionally invested in that connection. And so, yeah, naturally people are going to want more. You can't get mad at somebody for their emotions and their respect and their desire evolve that you spend together. You
Absolutely.
may still be in the same place
That's being human.
for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not them changing up. Their emotions have evolved. Yours haven't. You have maintained that transactional idea and desire, but for them, they want more. So you can't be
Absolutely.
mad at that. You
Yeah.
can't be mad at that.
I'm with you on that. And again, like this is probably going to be a two-parter. Like
Oh
we're
man,
gonna
this might
have,
be a three-part.
yeah,
We might have to bring the royal
yeah,
cipher in on this one too,
yeah,
because there's
exactly.
so much to this.
There's a
There's so
lot to
much to
this.
this.
There's a lot
You
to this.
know,
Yeah.
but just to follow up on the question I asked you, yeah, there's family of origin stuff with this too. I can't tell you how many clients I see. They come to you and say, "Well, my parents' love was transactional. I
Yeah.
don't know anything different."
Yeah.
So when it comes to the way that I'm interacting with my mate, well, the way I learned about what love is that you do for me, then I'll do for you. If you don't do for me, then I'm not doing for you. And that comes from their family of origin. That comes from their home. That comes from their parents, their grandparents, their
Yep.
siblings.
Yep.
This is all they have seen. That if I can't get anything out of you, you serve no purpose for me. Right. And so now, as they're trying to transition into a stable and healthy relationship,
They don't know how to do it.
they don't
They
they
don't
don't
know
know how
how
to
to do
behave any
it.
differently.
Yep. Don't know
Right.
how to do
Their
it.
expectations are always going to be based off of what you can do for me.
I know. Yeah.
And it seems very selfish. But the idea here is that it's not always about being selfish. Sometimes it's being blind to the fact that other ways to love, to cherish, to
Mm.
appreciate
Mm.
than just what you're receiving out of the situation.
Yeah. That's well said. That's very well said. Yeah. Yeah. That's on point, bro.
So man, there's so much more. Like Dr. John and I have both said throughout this episode, yo, we're gonna have to do a 2,
Yeah.
3, maybe 4 part with this.
Yeah.
There
It's
are
a lot
so
here.
many
It's a
levels to
lot
this.
here.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
lot. Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm with you. We got to bring the cipher in. It'll be interesting to see what Lena and Anisha thinks, man.
Yeah, I'm
I
curious
mean,
to hear what they gotta say.
because they'll have a lot of good perspective to offer on that. So I'm
Yeah.
with that, man.
And I think as us being licensed clinical marriage and family therapists, we deal with this
I know.
constantly with our
I
clients.
know.
And I think oftentimes we don't even approach it from the standpoint that this is a
No.
transactional relationship, and that's what the problem is. But then when you sit back and think about it, it's like, oh, you guys are just only doing what you want to do based off of what the other person's doing. And if they're not doing it for you, you're not doing either. I mean, it's just such a major part of what it is that we're seeing. But any which way, look, it is time for us to get into our noble truths. Dr. John, please break it down for people. What are your noble truths for this episode about transactional relationships today?
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of noble truths over the next few episodes. Yeah, I mean, we covered a good amount, and there's still everything that we covered today still needs to be broken down. But I think a couple of noble truths I'll say is be very intentional if you're going to engage in a transactional relationship. I
Mhm.
think that's such a critical part. If you're not, if you're trying to hoodwink someone into it, or if you, when I say hoodwink, is be clear. If you want to do a transactional relationship, do it, own it, be intentional about it. It doesn't mean, to Brother Reek's point, that things can't evolve. Um, but just be very intentional that when you enter one, you have to name it. The other person has to name it. This is what we're doing, and be as clear with those boundaries about that. So that's one noble truth. And I think the second one too is if at any point you or the other person things have changed, whether for better or for worse, um, you need to have conversations. You need to be very explicit. You need to be very clear about what that change is, how that change has impacted the way you may show up, and see if there's room to talk through how can we accommodate those changes. So I think those are the two things that I'd like to stress right now. There's just a lot going on in my brain about this topic,
I'm
bro.
telling you.
I mean, I'm seriously.
Yeah, and because we have to get to other points in this conversation too, because we want to teach you how to actually move from transactional relations. Why do I keep saying transitional? Transactional relationships into a more romantic, loving relationship. So
Right.
I don't want you to think you're walking away from the podcast without anything that I think about is I want you to recognize that in a transactional relationship, the emotional investment is lacking. You can't sit up here in my office and tell me that I truly love my mate and I want to be with my mate, but you're focused only on what they're doing and what they're providing or not providing. And that's the reason why you have so many issues with them. Not saying that's not relevant, but if that's the only thing you can point to, and then you want to sit up here and tell me, oh, but I love him, I love him, I love him. Yo, there's something not connecting there, right? Not. So that lack of emotional investment is very evident in a transactional relationship.
True.
The other thing to consider here is, when you're in a transactional relationship and you're not getting what you want, and you didn't turn around and not provide your mate what they want, that is punishing behavior.
Yeah. Well,
you are intentionally hurting your mate because you're not receiving what you want out of your relationship. You are punishing your mate. That is not a demonstration of love. That is not a demonstration of being emotionally invested in a relationship. You are intentionally hurting your mate because you think you're not getting what you want out of the relationship. Your expectations aren't being met.
Yeah.
So those are my two quick takeaways. We can, of course, go on and on with this. And we're not going to do that today because we have to just come back and, like we said, we're going to bring in the Royal Cipher to this conversation. The Royal Cipher has to take part in this. Anisha, Weena, get ready because we are going to take this to a whole nother level. Dr. John, please, we got to wrap it up, man. So why don't you tell the people where they can find out more information about you and what you got going on, man?
Yeah, always check us out at kingsoftheheart.com. We're doing a lot of great stuff. In terms of clinical practice and therapy, all the work that I'm doing, come check us out at the Relationship Counseling Center of Maryland. So that's www.rccmaryland, spell out the Maryland.com. We're doing a lot of great work at the Vera Institute of Justice. Super busy. A lot of great things lined up for that, and just working on justice for all people all around the country. Feel free if you just want to do a basic search on what I'm up to and all the stuff that I'm tied to. Just type in Dr. John Hart. The social media platforms. But again, come show some love for the Kings of the Heart. We're only getting better and stronger because of you all. So, yeah. What about you, Brother Reek? Where can we find you and all the amazing work that you've been doing, brother?
Well, you can always find me, of course, like Dr. John said right here at kingsoftheheart.com. You can also check us out on YouTube. We are streaming live on YouTube right now, but you can also catch the recording later on. You can also check us out on Facebook. You can see us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We are all those places, Kings of the Heart. All right. I think on Twitter we actually KOTH LMFT. But if you go to our website, you'll see all the links and connections there. You can find out more about me by going to my website, TariiqOmariWalton.com. InsightMFT.com is my clinical site, and my media page is viewsandvibes.com. Then again, you can see me on all the different social media platforms as Tariiq Omari Walton. Again, like Dr. John said, we are worldwide. We are in your face. You can find us everywhere, including right here on Kings of the Heart, the Kings of the Heart podcast. Yep. Dr. John, my brother, love you, man. Great time with you as always.
As always, man.
And we'll see you soon, right?
Yeah. We got more to come, man. So y'all buckle up. Y'all really buckle up.
All right, y'all. You guys take care, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.